Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Design to Move. My name is Ryan Maxwell. We've got Ryan Brown and Hunter Schweitz. We're all movement specialists here at Fluid Health and Fitness. Today we're going to bring you another episode of Design to Move, and this one is going to be on plantar fasciitis. We do have a timestamp listed here in the corner. It's going to give you time indicators of all of our segments through the video. So if you want to skip to one of the specific segments, go ahead and use that. And remember, at the end of the video, we're going to condense all of the exercises that we show you today, put them into a condensed format so you can use that as a tutorial at the end. So today we're going to focus on plantar fasciitis. This is a painful condition of the foot. It's a ripping of the ligaments that help to support the arch of the foot. It's a painful condition. A lot of people have it, because of which we're going to show you some very simple exercises to help to reduce the symptoms or maybe even eliminate it. So if you have interest on this topic, make sure to read the blog. It's listed in the description below. We do like to hear from you, so make sure to subscribe or reach out to us specifically at admin@fluidhealthandfitness.com. With that, we have a whole series of release strategies to get into, so let's get started. So we have to talk a little bit about the mechanics of the foot and the ankle to understand why we're seeing this problem. Remember, the fasciitis, or the plantar fascia of the foot, is basically a ligament that helps to support the arch or the transverse arch of the foot. It's an important arch or structure because it absorbs kinetic energy, almost like a springboard, when you put your foot down on the ground. Now this tension here in the ligament can absorb up to 7,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. It's a pretty rigid little guy, and it's there to help absorb all that kinetic force from the ground, which is a magnification of your body weight. So the way to think of this is, if your toe goes up like this, or pulled it up, it increases the arch, and that's called the windlass mechanism. You see that where the big toe goes up like that, and on the heel off or the propulsion phase of gait. So if I stand up and I stand and put my weight into my lead leg and then come through my mid stance till my heel comes off and I push off, that's actually my calf propelling me forward in space, and that engages that windlass mechanism. So what that does is it creates a greater arch or doming, and then it creates a supination of the foot. So the foot will open up. Now, when people have plantar fasciitis, it's normally the opposite of that. The foot will flatten out when the foot comes in contact, and it will evert out. And that puts a ton of stress and pressure on that connective tissue. And normally that's associated with really taut posterior muscles on the leg, the gastrocs or the calf muscles, and the hamstrings. These guys are tight and they attach to the Achilles, which pulls the heel bone upward, putting more upward pressure on that fascial bed, which leads to a tearing where the aponeurosa or the ligaments attach at the heel. It's called the calcaneus. That tearing, that pulling, pisses it off, and that's what we feel as a radiating pain into our foot. So we have to recognize that the calves are a big culprit in that, and that the positioning of the hips pull the pelvis anteriorly or down and basically stretch and charge these muscles. So there's two sets of muscles that are really important for release in order to get the pressure off the foot. That's going to be the hip flexors and the calf muscles, and those are exactly the muscles that we're going to target today. Okay, so first we have to show you how to use soft tissue release to make that work. And to get the calves off, we're going to use a lacrosse ball. So Ryan's going to get in position, grab your lacrosse ball, let's get started. Okay, so we got two balls here. One is a lacrosse ball, this is our fascial ball. The reason why I'm showing you both is because one has a broader surface area, it's bigger, which means there's going to be less pounds per square inch. So that's one of the reasons why we use two different diameters. We want to see what your body can tolerate. If there's too much pain from doing this work, this is called an active release, you're going to want to defer to the ball that's a little bit broader, because your body will guard and it's not going to let you get the impact or the effect that we're going for. So I'm going to start with the bigger ball for Ryan, and he's going to place this right underneath of his leg, so that his calf lays on top of it and basically compresses the calf muscle. It's called the gastrocnemius, lateral gastrocnemius. So it's going to push that muscle, kind of squish it between the ball and his actual tibia and fibula. Okay, so he's going to put weight down on that ball. He can use his other leg to assist, to increase the weight, but basically we're applying pressure to the muscle to help it to relax or release. Now before we do anything, we're going to start maybe a little bit closer to the Achilles, and there's a muscle that shrouds that called the soleus or soleus. Then you can start there and start working your way up until you find a tender spot and we're gonna stay on that tender spot and hold it there for about 30 to 60 seconds. Again, the goal is to create a neuromuscular release, meaning that the nervous system is gonna tell the tension in the muscle to relax. Once you feel that initial release, and it should feel like again, a subsiding of pain or pressure, then you're going to start to move the joint that the muscle attaches to. Now remember, we talked about the plantar fascia being an extension of the ankle or the heel called the calcaneus. So if I start to move the foot up like so, I'm dorsiflexing that big toe. It's going to engage that windlass mechanism, and it's going to start to pull that muscle belly under the pressure of the ball. Now bear in mind that if there's pain in the foot when you do that, do you think it's a good idea to move the ankle as much? The answer is no. So what you want to do is make sure that you're only moving the ankle in a pain-free range of motion so that you don't aggravate an already inflamed area. Use some common sense, folks, and then just work through that muscle bed until it starts to soften and relax. You would go through some breathing cycles. So he's going to breathe in as he pulls his toe up, rotate it inward, activating through these tibial muscles up here in the shin, and then breathing out and letting it go and sinking into that ball with each subsequent breath. Make sense? You do that for about 6 times. You're going to attack both sides. Normally, plantar fasciitis affects one foot, but most of the time we do have imbalances on both sides of our body, so I would recommend that you do both the left and the right side, and then we would move into the hips. That's our next release. Let's get going. So the calf is the usual muscle that most people defer to release when they're talking about the foot. The next muscle that's, I think, equally as important is the hip flexor muscles. And this is how we create global distortions in our body that lead to this acute relationship or condition down at the foot. So we want to make sure you guys are aware of that so you can look for it in your own posture and your own framing. So the way to think of this is that the hip flexors, and namely the psoas, it's called the iliopsoas or psoas muscle. It's a big muscle that attaches your femur to your pelvis and then to your spine. It basically connects your legs to your spine and your hips. It's pretty important, and you use the muscle when you lift your hip up like this or your leg up into flexion, okay? But because we sit a lot, these muscles have a tendency to be taut, and then they create issues around the hips and create hypermobility around the hips. So we're going to use this ball or this ball, again, based on tolerance and what you can handle, to get that muscle to relax. So Hunter, what's the deal though? How does this relationship impact the ankle? So why are we even thinking about this?
Yeah, so like you said, the hip flexors attach from the legs up to the spine or the iliopsoas, and then what happens is it pulls us forward anteriorly, shifting all of our weight forward, putting us in this propensity to lean forward into our knees, and then shifting our weight into our toe box, making our gastroc even tighter. So that windlass mechanism, basically, it's not going to be functioning as well.
Yeah, it's always going to be a little bit off. So anyways, we're going to get Ryan back into a laying position, and we're going to be targeting those hips. Now remember, your hip flexors are going to attach the femur under this inguinal ligament and then into the spine. So we're going to try to identify that psoas. If you lift your leg up and kind of flex it and use your fingertips, you'll feel a bundling of muscles. Okay, now again, you might feel the rectus femoris and a couple of the other muscle groups, but really right along there's going to be a little psoas muscle you'll feel flex, okay, and that's the muscle that you're going to put the ball on. So Ryan, let's use the big ball just for demonstration purposes, and he's going to get down. Okay, so Ryan has the ball right underneath of his hip bone, that's called the ASIS, and he's going to position himself so that his right hip is on that ball. His left hip is going to come off to the side. So I'm going to have him abduct, it's just a term for bringing the leg away from the body on the opposite hemisphere, and that's going to shift his center of mass over onto the ball and put more pressure into it. So did you feel that, Ryan?
Oh yeah.
Okay, while you're in this position, make note of your spine. You don't want to create excess rotation or again a dumping or excess arching, so make sure to keep your abs on, tuck your chin or your tummy under. You're going to use your breath and pull your abs into flexion, so breathe out a little bit. When you breathe out, it'll engage your core, and you can see how it lifts his back up a bit. And that's going to increase the tension on that psoas muscle. Now, again, that muscle's tight, it's small, it's tucked underneath the rectus femoris, it comes up and under, so it may be hard to get to. So pressure and consistency is key here. A lot of times people will defer to this little lacrosse ball because it's a little more acute and get deeper into that hip socket, okay? But then you would stay on that muscle and then wait there again for about 30 to 60 seconds until the muscle starts to relax. and you'll start feeling it kind of almost release some pressure on your lower back. The psoas and the lower back muscles, they kind of share basically real estate on the spine, so you'll feel it as a release in the lower back. So after you've held it there again for 30-60 seconds, he's going to start bending through the knee. He's going to start breathing out, flexing his abs concurrently. So breathe out, flex the abs, bend the knee, and then breathe in and relax and see if you can sink into the bowl. We'd go through again about 6 to 10 breathing cycles on each side. Again, the net impact of the activity is to release the tension that pulls the hips down so that they can rotate upward and the center of mass can shift back up over your heels so you don't feel that forward leaning into your toe box, and again, by extension, the pressure on the aponeurosa or the plantar fascia. Okay? So again, do both sides, and that'll bring us to the end of a release. That's only one part of the coin, or one side of the coin. We got to get the muscles that are now weakened and not being engaged to come to the table so we can balance out these relationships. Let's get to it. So we're going to use an exercise as an activation technique to get a muscle stronger that's normally deficient for individuals that have plantar fasciitis. Now remember, the plantar fasciitis is an overstretching or a tearing of the ligament of the dome of the foot. But the dome is also structurally supported through the muscles of the feet, and specifically one of the muscles that we're going to be targeting or strengthening is called the abductor hallucis. It again attaches the toe box to the heel, and it creates again that transverse arch of the foot. Now normally when you have flat feet, you'll see the foot dump inward. So Ryan's going to show you, it dumps inward and the ankle will roll in with it. Okay, it's called tibial internal rotation, and that's a pronation of the feet. If you ever go get shoes fitted, they're going to talk about supination or pronation, and really the pronation is the inward dumping of that dome as the foot flattens and rolls out. So that's going to stretch again that fascial tissue of the foot and actually elongates the abductor hallucis muscle. So what we want to do is work the muscle action by creating a dome of the foot, and we do that by pulling the toe in closer to the heel and actually create an arch of the foot. So we're going to do this as an exercise. Ryan's going to center his weight onto his right leg. He's going to put his weight into his heel. Again, as a preface, we don't want this to exacerbate pain. So if you are actually symptomatic, there is pain in the foot, don't do the exercise. We don't want to aggravate it. This should be pain-free. If there's really a big question about that, we would refer you to your physician or qualified professional, okay? For today, just know that you're gonna pull that toe in towards the heel. You'll notice that that's gonna roll your foot open, which is called supination, and you'll feel it as, again, a contraction on the bottom of your foot. So do you feel that, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And once you hold that dome, you're gonna hold it there for about 3 seconds, and then you're gonna slowly let the toe, the big toe, release and let your foot flatten back down to the ground. Once again, what we're trying to do is work the mechanics of the slow opening of that dome, which again is the resistance of ground reaction forces and gravity to help control that force as the foot falls down and spreads out. The goal of these strength exercises is to make that muscle more alive, so it comes to the table neurologically, but also to get it stronger. Once it gets stronger, it becomes stiffer. And that stiffness is what's going to assist the fascial tissues of the foot in supporting the foot so that they're not the only requirement or the only person coming to the table to help it. Mm-hmm. Does it make sense? We hope you get it. So again, you're going to do about 20 repetitions. He's going to hold the foot up, pull that big toe down. If you really want a challenge, try to lift the other toes up. So the big toe will go down into flexion, the other little toes will come up into extension. And that's gonna be hard, he can't do it. It's a challenge. He'll work towards it, okay? Hopefully you will too. But you'll do that for 20 repetitions. Give yourself a minute after 20 repetitions and then do it again. And one more time, we wanna do this on both sides of the body, both the left and the right. You'll notice, oddly enough, if you have stronger arch muscles, this will do away with some of the pain in the knees. A lot of times there's associated pain in the knee or pain in the knee, pain in the hip, pains in the lower back, all again relative to the biomechanics of the heel strike and the gait pattern, all because the foot's not strong enough to absorb the energy. So there are some side benefits to this as well. Again, go through 2 sets, 20 repetitions, and then we're gonna get into our next strengthening exercise. Basically what we're doing is another integration exercise. The exercise is meant to teach the central nervous system how to coordinate all the muscle firing patterns to create the right alignment at all the major joint centers that we're targeting. So what we're looking at here again is the ankle and the support of the foot, but how it relates up the kinetic chain into your hip and into the rest of your body. And remember, as we walk, there are very specific patterns of movement that go on and very specific engagement or recruitment patterns in your muscles. The way that they fire and the sequence that they fire in dictates whether or not you're absorbing and transferring force the right way, or if it's actually creating distortion and actually hurting you. So today we're going to show you how to make it right in the way that your body would want to fire as it would look in gait. Now specifically in gait, it's going to be mid-stance. And mid-stance is where your heel or your leg is directly underneath your body. So as you walk, you step forward, you shift your weight into your leg, and your body's literally balancing on one leg. That puts the most amount of force into the foot of the entire gait cycle. And that's normally when the foot is going to dump, and you're going to see that pronation and that flattening and again the stretching of the fascia of the foot, which pisses it off, right? Yeah. So once again, if there's pain in this movement, don't do it. We want it to be pain-free. And again, refer yourself to a physician if you have questions. What we're going to do is balance on his left leg, and he's going to pull back with his right arm. The point here is that we're going to create a dome of the left foot, just like we did with the prior exercise. He's going to contract the glute on the same hemisphere to stabilize his pelvis, and then he's going to lift his opposing leg up into flexion like it would look in gait, and he's going to pull his arm back on the opposite hemisphere again as it would look in gait. This is again a bipedal movement, it's ambulation, and we're going to try to keep the hips neutral as he pulls his arm around the rib cage. So Ryan, give him a couple examples. He's going to dome his foot on the left, shift his weight to his heel, lift his leg up on the right, engaging his oblique, and then pull the scapula around the rib cage without rotating through his hip. The pelvis should have very little sway in it. He's breathing in as he pulls his arm back, and then breathes out, contracting his abdominals as his hip comes down. All the while making note not to lose the dome of the foot. So you will feel this again as a pressure through the middle of the foot, through the glute on the same hemisphere, and again through the core and the torso as it stabilizes your pelvis.
You guys remember he's squeezing his left glute to stabilize, and then he's rolling back his scapula. So he's pulling through the scapula first, retracting, and the arm is following.
Yep.
Breathing in the whole time.
Yep, and that's a good point. We want to draw all these pieces together through the whole kinetic chain, and you'll notice that his plumb line, go ahead and stop, Brian. His head should be back up over his shoulder, so tuck your chin. His shoulder is in line right with this little ridge of his skull, right in line with his hip, right in line with his ankle down here, and that would be plumb on, again, a sagittal line. So we want to make sure that you're trying to maintain that as much as possible as you go through this position so you can center up your body and then condition your central nervous system. So good job, Brian. So again, we're looking for 2 sets of 20 repetitions. You noticed how slowly he was committing to the movement. Don't go fast. This is not about speed. This is not about momentum. This is about precision. So take your time and make sure that you come down slowly as you release the tension so you can work against gravity and teach your body how to do that. Sound good? All right, so 2 sets of 20. Give yourself a minute in between. If you feel fatigue before that 2 sets or before that 20 reps, make sure to stop if you start to lose your form. Remember, precision is key. And then let's finish it off with the strength movement that's going to work the other side of the body. So the last movement for the day is going to teach your nervous system how to stabilize your pelvis and your foot against gravity and against horizontal loading. So the body has different tendencies or certain tendencies to overuse certain muscles while it neglects others. And a big one in the lower body has to do with the groin muscles. They're tight, and so the leg will rotate in and it'll pull the tibia or the lower portion of the leg in with it and flatten that foot, creating that condition that leads to the shearing pressure on the plantar fascia, right? So we have to go and reduce that pressure and get this foot stronger so that it will resist that internal rotation. The problem is that this muscle coordinates with a whole series of muscles across the midsection. It's called the anterior oblique sling, and sometimes it dominates for the entire sling system so that the other sides of these muscles don't cooperate. These are very important muscles as they help to stabilize the trunk and the pelvis as we walk. So what we want to do is feed this into our nervous system, teach the body how to recruit the muscles the right way, and try to reduce the tone of that groin muscle while coordinating the effort of the obliques and the dome on the opposite hemisphere. So we're going to do that today by getting into a split stance position using our little band.
And guys, if you don't have someone like me holding a band, remember you can always just tie this into a little knot and then place it in a door jamb, just like so, and then you have that right to your side, so you don't need another person.
So Ryan's going to target his right foot. Again, we've been going back and forth through the video series. Remember, this would all be on the same side of the body, so make sure that you're targeting the same side. He's going to position his weight, so once again, he's stacked over his hips. He's maintaining anatomic neutral. Remember, head over shoulder, shoulder over pelvis. You're not seeing any outsway in the opposite hip, so it's not rotated out, and his knee isn't going to be flared outward. So he's stacked under his hips. His weight is centered on his heel, on his lead leg, and you'll notice that his kneecap is tracking over his second toe, so he's keeping that nice femoral angle from the hip down to the ankle, okay? Now again, he's using his arms as a lever and an extension of his trunk, and that's going to allow him to integrate or to facilitate his external oblique here. He's going to breathe in and rotate through the trunk, pulling the arms across the torso. His gaze will stay straight, so he's going to keep his eye line straight, and then breathe out, containing the rotation on the way back. Now, if you're doing this along with us, you'll notice how much pressure your groin wants to use. Ryan, can you testify to that?
Oh yeah.
Right? He's containing that, and he's keeping the dome of the foot. It's a lot more challenging than it looks. And you're going to start to deviate with the knee dumping in. The hip will start to translate out, and you'll start to spiral, and that opposite hip will spin out or out sweep. So you want to contain that the entire time. Keep the pelvis neutral, keep your foot domed, keep that knee tracking over the second toe. So breathe in and rotate. The trunk rotates under the head, on top of the pelvis with no movement in the pelvis, breathing out slowly to contain the pressure as he comes back, making sure that the knee and the foot doesn't, again, roll in. Good job. So you would do another 2 sets of 20. You want to go to the point where your body fatigues. If the band tension is too great, don't use the band. We want to work on the mechanics in teaching your nervous system how to support it. If the load is too great, then reduce it. Eventually you can add up to that 20 repetitions, but we do want to try to commit to 2 sets of 20. And once again, give yourself another minute to recover. So that brings us to the end of our tutorial. We hope that you like it. Remember, at the very end here, we're going to consolidate these and just do little snippets of the videos with the variables that you want to do, again, the sets and reps. Make sure to follow along. You're going to want to do this several times during the week if you are experiencing that issue with the fascia, or if you notice when you get into your peak season, maybe you're a runner, you put a lot of pressure on your feet, you notice that this sparks up after so many months of running. Well, use this as some corrective exercise to help keep you in the game, keep you from getting injured, and basically avoid those nuisances that keep us from actualizing our potential. Okay? So if you have questions, again, reach out to us at admin@fluidhealthandfitness.com, and we'd love to hear from you. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, and again, read the blog on the topic for more information on what we're talking about. And we always say at the end of the video, your body's designed to move, stay in motion, so stay with it, and we'll see you next week for another episode.